Tom Donnie here from Fort Dodge and Sturgis. Going to look at a headliner install on a 93. This happens to be an F. I think it's the same for the B and probably the 92B also. I know the A is slightly different, although the install may be the same. To take the headliner out, you have to remove the rear deck, which is right there. I've already got that out. Sometimes they got a speaker in it, but remove your rear deck, and then you've got a spring that goes around the rear window. And I used to think that was the spring went in the rubber, but it doesn't. There's an actual channel, metal channel around the rear window that are spring hooks to. That's that round spring right there. It goes all the way around there. And then you've got attach points for the two other springs. You can see the white right there, and hopefully the white right there. That's where everything unhooks and then reattaches in reverse order. Then you've also got, once you get all the springs out, you start taking the rods out one by one. You just release the rods, come on around, and then you've got a tight tab right there where that white mark is, and another one here where that white mark is. Those are pretty darn tight. So they'll take a little work to get those out. Saab makes a tool to do that. I did with my fingers, but it is pretty tight. Here's a diagram I made of everything to show how it all would go. And the rods are pretty distinct other than two of them. And they're sewn together. There's 3 springs in this unit. So you've got the spring that goes around the rear window. Then we got a spring that hooks in the very back. It runs along the roof line. And it'll be hooked to your headliner, of course, or be sewn in your headliner. And it hooks to the points I showed you in the trunk. And then you've got a huge spring that goes all the way around the headliner and hooks to the same hook points as our rear spring here, of course not the window one, but these hook together at the hook points that I showed you in the car. But basically you've got the rods, there's the front of it. You've got rod number 1, it's got pretty good bend to it, and it's sewn in here with the spring, so it's pretty hard to miss that one. Then you've got a black tip rod that's 45 inches in length. Right there it is with a black tip, and I painted all these. They all had paint on them, and that's the good thing about I have 3 of them here. This one I couldn't figure out what to do. Then this one was a little better, and then this one, of course, was still together. So from that, I could back engineer how everything went. So a black tipped rod, 45 inches. A white tipped rod, 64 inches, followed by rod number 4, which is a red tip at 46 1/4 also. These rods are so close together, I think if you intermixed them, it wouldn't matter. All these did have paint if you looked real careful, so I think they all have paint on for you. Again, if you don't, I don't know what the real difference is. This one seems to have maybe a little bit more bend. You know, it's going to be slightly different just because of the roof line, but it's, they're falling in right about there, and there's almost indiscernible. Probably if this wasn't an aircraft manufacturer, they'd be both marked white or both marked red. But sometimes the Saab engineers were pretty anal about stuff. And then we got a blue tipped rod, which is 48 3/4, and that's got a pretty good bend to it. So it's, you can see them here easier probably. You can see the bend on that one. I mean, that's pretty distinctive that it bends down, and it's blue and it's longer, so it's of course going to be different. And then you've got a yellow tipped rod, and the yellow tipped rod has these sharp bends back in. It's the furthest most rear rod. Really easy to discern that. So the front and the rear, easy to tell. Then you've got the 4 in between, and they're not bad. Like I said, I've got all the measurements there. I'm going to turn this sideways for a second. You could screenshot that with a camera and get it in a horizontal format rather than this one. But the springs, I did measure those 2. The one that goes all the way across the top here, that one there, it measured, depending which one I measured, 54 to 57 inches long. And it hooks to the main spring, which measured about a 13 foot 2 inches. Again, 13 foot 2 inches on the main spring that goes all the way around. Again, that measurement will vary slightly. And then the rear window spring, I only measured one of those 2, the one that goes around the rear window channel. That's about 73 inches long. So you've got 3 springs that hold this whole thing together. And to install it, you hook your tabs. You can see the hook points where these were caught in the car, up in the corner here, the little white hook points I showed you. Put those in first. start putting your rods in, keep everything scrumming back, and then it's a matter of getting your springs hooked up. I don't know if you do the rear window channel first or if you do that last. I would think you'd end up doing this medium one first, the big long one second, and then the window channel last, but trial and error will determine that. As long as you can find out what the hell you have, that's the main thing, because if you don't know what rods go where, or if you've got all the rods, it makes it pretty tough. And again, all the tips are painted. I repainted these to make them easy for the video, but that's the colors of them, and they're all the same. You know, it's the same pattern. So 96, the parts manual does show the painted rods in the 96 parts manual, and it shows the order of them, and a separate part number for them too. The 93, I can't find anything that shows a difference, so that's why I thought it'd be good to make this video for the 93s. Anyway, good luck putting it all back together, and hope your restoration looks very cool. One thing I did notice, these rods, when you put them back in place, they do help hold that Duramat to the ceiling. Whatever you've used there's a bunch of it that's fallen down on this old one, but you can actually see where the rods were holding. So your long panels up here, the rods are going to help hold all those, which, you know, I've had some of that Duramat put in without the headliner, and on a hot day it'll warm up the glue and your panels will fall off. It happens the same thing on the doors. You got to be real careful what you use for glue. You think it's holding good, then on a hot day your panels fall off and you can't roll your window down. Anyway, hope this helps someone. This is Tom Downey from Fort Dodge and Sturgis. One last look at this puppy. Those measurements that should help you. Signing off.